Hey guys, this is Mike Mahaffey, the old bastard BJJ guy, here for BJJ Mental Models. Back in my day, we had to walk uphill in the snow both ways to get to the academy just to learn some crappy technique from a random purple belt. You kids have it so easy because now you can just subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium and get tons of great audio courses to learn new techniques, enhance your mindset, and entertain yourself. You can even get personalized rolling reviews from some of your favorite BJJ Mental Models coaches, including me. It's like having your own seminar, you spoiled little whippersnappers. So what are you waiting for? Subscribe to BJJ Mental Models Premium right now, get off my lawn, and go train.
Hey, welcome to BJJ Mental Models. I'm Steve Kwan. BJJ Mental Models is your guide to a conceptual and intelligent Jiu-Jitsu approach, and I'm back again here today with another quick mini episode for you. For those who have missed the first 4 of these in the feed, we are adding an entirely new podcast to the feed. Our regular full-length episodes go out live on Mondays, but I've decided I'm also going to start releasing these quick hit episodes on Thursdays as well. So going forward, you can expect 2 podcasts from us every week. Monday will always be a long-form deep dive into Jiu-Jitsu mental models, concepts, tactics, strategies, philosophies, and all of that. But for these short mini episodes, my goal is to give you a quick introduction to a really important mental model that'll help your Jiu-Jitsu get better. And I'll give you one of these each week. This is mostly going to be for new listeners who haven't listened to us from episode 1 and need a quick primer on everything we've done, but also it's a great refresher for people who have been ride or die with us for years. So anyway, with all that said, here we go today. I want to talk about something called the alignment scorecard. Now, I want these mini episodes to generally be things you can just pop in and learn from immediately with no background knowledge. This one's a little bit different though. To get the most out of this conversation, you're going to have listened to the mini episodes 1 through 4 that we already covered. 1 is on base, 2 is on posture, 3 is on structure, 4 is on alignment. If you're not familiar with those concepts, it's going to be hard to maximize your value out of this one. So if you haven't listened to those already yet, I would suggest listening to them first. You can find them in the feed. I will also put links to those in the show notes for this episode. But with all of that said, in the first 4 of these mini episodes, we talked about base, posture, and structure. These are the 3 components of what Rob Biernacki calls alignment. Now, one of the things I love about alignment as a framework for understanding Jiu-Jitsu is that it also comes with a really easy way to evaluate how the roll is going and what you should do next. In Jiu-Jitsu, cognitive load is a real problem. For those not familiar with the term, this is basically the amount of stuff you can process in your working memory all at one time. Our cognitive load is not fixed, to a large extent is based on your prior knowledge. So as an example, if I go to a white belt and I tell the white belt to do an armbar, they're going to have to really think about it. They're going to have to consider every single step because all of this is still quite new to them and they haven't internalized and made automatic a lot of that activity so far. Whereas if I go to a black belt and I tell them to do an armbar, they can probably do it without really much thought at all because after years and years of training this technique, it just happens automatically. You just know what to do without even thinking about it. That's what cognitive load is about. It's about how much stuff can you hold in your brain at one given time. And again, this can vary depending on experience level because the more experienced you get at something, the more automatically you can do it and the less cognitive load it will cause on you. Now that said, regardless of whether you are a day 1 white belt or a 20-year black belt, hitting your cognitive load limit is guaranteed at some point during Jiu-Jitsu. There's always going to be something new and novel that you haven't seen before, no matter how much you've trained. You could understand to the best of your ability everything there is to know about Jiu-Jitsu, but next week there could be a new technique that's been discovered that you just don't know. And even if you've been rolling every day for years, there are so many things that can happen in Jiu-Jitsu, it's unavoidable that at some point you're going to hit a situation that you just haven't seen before, and that's going to make it way harder to make a good decision in the moment if you have to stop to think about it. So, how do you make better decisions in the moment? Well, regardless of whether you are a white belt or a black belt, your goal is to train enough and think simple enough that you can keep your cognitive load low. You don't want to have to be doing a lot of overthinking on the mats because that uses up the cognitive cycles in your brain, which are slow. It's going to be a lot better if you can grapple almost instinctually or automatically. And that's where this alignment framework really comes into play. So what is the alignment scorecard? Let's talk about this. This is just a simple way that you can use Rob Biernacki's alignment framework to quote unquote score any given situation in jiu-jitsu to understand how good am I doing, how good is my opponent doing, and what should I do next. So the way that he works this out is Rob says that assign yourself first and foremost a score, either yes or no, 1 or 0, for each of the 3 aspects of alignment. So number 1, do I have base? Number 2, do I have posture? Number 3, do I have structure? And again, if you need a refresher on these, listen to the mini episodes 1 through 4 that we did. I'll put a link in the show notes to each of those. But why are you doing this? You're trying to really understand, regardless of whatever's actually happening in the role, regardless of what position you're in, or what technique you're attempting, or what the other person is attempting to do to you, regardless of all of that, what really matters is, do I have my alignment? Do I have base, posture, and structure? This is a really easy thing to hold in your working memory, regardless of how experienced or inexperienced you are at jiu-jitsu. I mean, pretty much everyone who trains jiu-jitsu can at least count to 3, right? I would at least hope so. So you can always look at any position and ask, do I have base? Do I have posture? Do I have structure from here? And that should be a good foundation for assessing whether you're safe in any position. Now, it's important to note that having base, posture, and structure does not necessarily align one-to-one with whether you're in a quote-unquote good position. And what I mean by that, let's say I am in bottom side control. You might assume that that means I've got no base, no posture, no structure. That's not actually true, though. It is possible to have all 3 of those things even if you're in an inferior position. And the reality is, if I'm in bottom side control and I do have my base, my posture, my structure, I'm going to get out of there. And there's not going to be much that you can do to hold me there. If you've ever sparred with a more junior grappler and put them in side control and just felt them crumble, eventually they'll have that moment of realization where they just can't get out of it. That's not strictly because you're holding them in side control. It's because you're holding them in side control while their alignment is broken and they don't know how to get it back. So compare that to rolling with a seasoned black belt. Probably many people have felt this before, where you get side control on a black belt, but you can just feel that they're never in danger. Yes, you're technically on top of them, beside them, but they're actively moving, they've got their frames, they're getting out. Sometimes you get into that position and you just know you don't have a chance of holding that person there. Well, that's the same position as what the white belt was in. The only difference is you haven't broken their alignment. So even in a bad position, you can have full alignment. So let's take side control, for example. If I'm on bottom side control, if I can put my feet on the floor and I can move and angle my hips and shrimp out, move out and in, I might still have my base, even though I'm in bottom side control. Because that's what base is about. It's about being able to generate and absorb force relative to your goals. If you can move around the way you might want to from bottom side control, you've probably got base. That doesn't mean you're in a great position, but it does mean you have base. And if you've got base, it's going to be easier for you to get out. Similarly, in bottom side control, if I am able to look right at you and my neck and my spine are aligned in the same direction, I would have good posture. This is the reason why so many side control pins apply that shoulder of justice, where you try to drive your shoulder into the person's jaw. When you do that, it's not about pain. It's not because you want to hurt the person's face. It's because you're trying to force them to look away when you do that. And by making them look away, you can make sure that their head and their spine are pointed in different directions. That makes their spine and their neck ineffective. That means you've broken their posture. And finally, structure. That means, can you effectively utilize your limbs? Part of the reason why so many side control defenses involve coiling up your arms and getting small is because you're trying to deny your opponent access to your limbs. Anyone who's been training jiu-jitsu for even a few months knows that if you're on bottom side control, sticking your arms out in random directions can be dangerous, not just because of the submission, but because it opens up the space by your armpits and it lets people advance up into an even more dominant position from side control. So, all of that said, base, posture, structure. Give yourself a score for each of those. You're not looking for a 10-point score with a decimal attached. It's just yes or no, 1 or 0. Do I have these things? So again, taking side control as the example, if I'm on bottom side control, I don't like that position, but you know what? If my feet can connect with the floor and I can move around that way, I can be a shifting platform that my opponent can never settle on. If I can make sure that my head and my spine and my neck are all pointed in the same direction, and if I can prevent my opponent from controlling my limbs, I might have all 3 points of alignment at that point, even though I'm in a bad position. Now, does that mean I want to be in bottom side control, even though I've got alignment? No, of course not. But the fact that you have alignment means it's going to be way easier for you to stay safe and way easier to get out of that bad position. So again, cognitive load is a real thing. If you try to think of escaping from bottom side control as a series of techniques and steps, you're going to get overwhelmed very quickly. But if you're thinking about things in terms of alignment, that's only 3 variables you have to keep in your head at any given time. It's a much simpler framework for understanding what's safe and what's not in jiu-jitsu, and it also frees you of the burden of trying to memorize every single technique. Because when you think this way, you realize techniques by themselves usually don't work. It is maintaining your alignment while breaking your opponents that gives you the opportunity to do these techniques. It took me a long time to realize this. I would be stuck in bottom side control and I'd be trying to shrimp like crazy and it just wouldn't work and I'd give up. And at some point around purple or brown belt, I realized it's not about that. It's about alignment, making sure I'm always safe, I'm always moving. And if that's the case, and I can keep my opponent moving and reacting as well, the windows to do those techniques just appear on their own. So we've talked about our own alignment. Once you've got your own alignment taken care of, the next thing is to attack your opponents. So first you want to give yourself that alignment score between 0 to 3. Do I have base, posture, structure? Yes or no for each. And then you also want to ask the same question of your opponent. Do they have their base, posture, and structure? And your goal is not so much to do a move or a technique to them. Your goal is to take away their base and posture and structure. And that's a lot simpler than trying to do a technique. So if I want to take away your base, what I really want to do, I want to make sure you can't generate force. And how do you generate force? Well, you push off something. So there's a lot of ways you can take away someone's base. A very easy way from many positions is if I can prevent your feet from connecting with the floor or connecting with my body, I can probably take away a lot of your base. This is why so many moves, so many guard passes and pins involve holding the leg or lifting the leg. You are trying to take away the other person's base with a lot of these techniques. So again, just a quick little hack there. If you have the opportunity to take someone's foot off of the ground and make sure it can't connect to anything, that's almost always a good idea because it attacks their base. Similarly, posture attacks. I want to make sure that your head and your neck and your spine are not aligned in the same direction. Forcing someone's head to turn in a different direction from the rest of their body will always be a good strategy. Again, this is most obvious when I'm on top side control, but you could really do this from a lot of different positions, and you should always be asking yourself, do I have the opportunity to twist their head at an angle that makes them unathletic and makes it hard for them to use that deadlift strength that comes from your core, your torso? That's what a posture attack is all about. And finally, structure. Again, I'm always trying to control your limbs or render them ineffective. Generally speaking, if I can control at least 2 of the joints in your arm or your leg, I have good solid control. A lot of ways that you can do this. A common way is pulling the arm or the leg across the center of someone's body. If you can do that, that will almost always break their structure. Now, one thing to point out here, of course this stuff can be done in gradients. It's not really true that you either have base or you don't. In reality, all of these things are a spectrum. You're going to have a degree of base, a degree of posture, a degree of structure. So you could get really anal retentive here and you could score yourself on a 100-point scale and say, I feel like I've got 82% base here. But that level of thinking is overthinking. It's not really helpful. The goal here is not to come up with the perfect metric for what your alignment is like. The goal here is to have a quick mental hack that you can use to make decisions quickly. If you have to choose a number between 0 to 3, that's something you can do really easily. If you have to choose 3 numbers between 0 to 100, it's going to slow down your thinking. We're not trying to turn this into an academic game of who has the most alignment. What we're just trying to do is make better decisions in the moment. So, how does this all play out? Well, at any point in time in jiu-jitsu, regardless of who's on top, who's on bottom, whether you're in a submission, whether they're in a submission, regardless of that, you'll always be wanting to make sure that your alignment is as good as possible. You want to have as many elements of alignment as possible, base, posture, and structure, and you want to take those away from your opponent. The higher your alignment number is, the safer you are. That means it's going to be harder for your opponent to hold you in position. It's going to be harder for them to advance position. It's going to be harder for them to submit you. The lower your opponent's alignment is, the easier everything gets for you. It will be easier for you to hold them in position, to advance position, or to submit them. And of course, if you can completely break someone's alignment, where they don't have base, they don't have posture, they don't have structure, you really should be able to submit them at that point. I mean, if someone's alignment score is 0, that means that it should be game over for them. There shouldn't really be any good reason why you can't beat someone who has no alignment. Now, granted, as mentioned earlier, being in a submission does not mean you have no alignment. It is possible to be defending a submission and still have alignment. So don't make the mistake of thinking that good position equals good alignment or good submission equals good alignment. We're not thinking in terms of submissions and positions here. We're thinking in terms of our base body mechanics, base, posture, structure. So again, how do we deploy this? I always suggest that if you're in a role and you find yourself just overthinking, you're flustered, you don't know what to do because you haven't internalized all that knowledge yet, just think to yourself, base, posture, structure. Keep those things for yourself at all times. Look for opportunities to take them away from your opponent. Very important though, protect your own alignment first. Don't even think about trying to break your opponent's alignment if you're leaving openings. So priority number 1 is maintain your alignment. Priority number 2 is break your opponents. If you want some visual examples of this, go to BJJConcepts.net. That's Rob Biernacki's site. I highly recommend it. If you like the type of stuff that we do at BJJ Mental Models, Rob's got a whole video academy, and as probably many people know, a lot of our work is inspired very directly by Rob. He's a friend of our show. I definitely recommend supporting him. So again, BJJConcepts.net. If you want to see some visuals of this, we've also got a lot of content like this on our premium site, both in our audio courses and in our video seminars and tutorials that we've got on our premium package as well. And of course, if you're a premium subscriber, you can also just sign up for our coaching and then we will give you feedback directly. That's often the easiest way to apply this stuff, is to see in the wild how this would really work with your own jiu-jitsu game and get feedback from someone who understands this at a coaching level. So anyway, there you go, the alignment scorecard, a simplified way of thinking about jiu-jitsu. It's just really a 3-point system for yourself, a 3-point system for your opponent. Hopefully that distills a lot of the complexity down about jiu-jitsu and gives you an idea of how to quickly assess a position and what to do next, even if it's something unfamiliar for you or something that you haven't quite internalized yet. So as always, a lot more of this on the main feed. BJJMentalModels.com is where you go to get everything we make, from the podcast, the newsletter, our concepts database, to BJJ Mental Models Premium. Thanks again for supporting us. Please do give me some feedback and let me know if these kinds of mini episodes are helpful, and we'll talk to you in the next one.